You are listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. We want to help demystify marketing to reduce risk, drive more and better opportunities, and grow your business. Are you ready to master marketing?
Today, in addition to my very special guest, Bill Lowell, we have an even more specialer guest, Amy Erato. How are things? Thanks for being here, by the way. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
How are things behind the cheddar curtain?
Are you asking Amy or myself? So
you guys are both behind the cheddar curtain. It's the blackout of news. We don't know what's happening back there.
For our
Is
listeners,
the mozzarella good or?
I'll give a quick insight. I'm in the Milwaukee area, and Amy is in the Madison area. So we're probably 90 miles away, Amy. But it's beautiful, and Amy, I'll let you answer that question. But it's beautiful up here today.
It is. You know, we're entering into beer and brat season with a side of cheddar cheese, so I can't complain. It's wonderful up here.
Behind the bratwurst curtain, that's even funnier.
That's right. Well, my roots go back to Milwaukee, so.
Yeah, as do mine. City of my birth, built a great business there. Now we're in Austin, Texas, through the modern miracle of technology. Here we are all together. But Bill, you have a long-standing relationship with Amy, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your friend? And I'm sure she can tell us about herself as well, but how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and seriously, we're honored to have you here, Amy. So thank you for agreeing to be part of the podcast today. So Amy and I go back probably I think at least 5 years, isn't it, Amy? 4 or 5 years. We've been doing some work with her organization, and she is a marketing genius. There is no doubt about that. And she's in charge of marketing and communication for an organization called WEA Member Benefits. And so Amy can explain a little bit more of that, but it's like when you talked about having the Net Promoter Score as the topic, I said, she's got to be our guest because she probably knows more about it than most anybody. So that's why I'm so excited to have Amy here with us today. So Amy, I don't know if you wanted to correct anything I just said, but go ahead.
No, that's great. And thank you, Bill and Pete, for having me on board today. I'm excited to uncover some truth about marketing and this thing we call Net Promoter Score. So
yeah, absolutely. No, it's our pleasure, and I think that it's one of those topics that it just depends on who you talk to. There's going to be an opinion about it, and so. But I think it'd be a good idea to probably tell people really quick Net Promoter Score. So, and you guys correct me, but it measures satisfaction and loyalty by asking them how likely are they to recommend your product or service to others. And is it always on a scale of 1 to 10? I think
0 to 10.
0 to 10, right? And it's it's easy, so that's kind of a cool part of it. And it's like I said, it's become kind of controversial, but it originates quite a while ago. What were you saying? I didn't know who invented it. We've used it.
There was a book called The Ultimate Question, and then he had a follow-up, and it was Richard Reichfeld and Bob Markey were the two that kind of created it. But I don't know, Amy, do you mind if I explain a little bit about it, and then we'll. So really, I mean, it is on a 0 to 10 scale, and it is the question, what's the likelihood, which is a great question, that you'd recommend our organization to, a friend or colleague. So that's key. Typically what happens is if you score a 9 or a 10, you're considered a promoter, which I know Amy will talk a little bit about referrals and word of mouth, but if you're a promoter, you're saying really good things and you're screaming good things about our organization from the rooftop. If you're a 0 to 6, you're kind of a detractor, and you could probably be saying things that really hurt the organization. And I don't need to get into all the calculations, but typically the calculation is taking your promoters and subtracting them from your detractors, and you get a number. It's so Amy, I don't know if you want to add something else to that. You go right ahead.
Well, that's basically it. And I think my organization about 5 years ago hired Bill and his organization to help us with surveying. At that time, we were really suffering from survey paralysis. Really, we surveyed everything. You called, we sent you a survey. You called, we talked to you about a survey. So we really wanted to, I think some of the executives in our organization at the time had read the book, and we really wanted a way to be able to measure the score, to measure the customer satisfaction in a way that was, measurable and something that we could do something with. So that's kind of how we came upon Bill and his organization to help us through that whole process.
Now, from a really practical standpoint, I mean, it's really a question on an instrument survey with other questions, right? And so if people are wondering, what exactly, it's a research tool, it's a question, and it's a score, and it's one way to measure loyalty, but you're using it to improve the customer's experience. So how do what does the customer experience look like at a firm like yours? Because we're B2B services, and so I think you're right in the crosshairs there.
Yeah, so we're a little bit of both. We do B2B and then we also do B2C. So our organization is financial services in nature. That's our flagship product. We have a financial 403B and IRA products that we administer for Wisconsin's public school employees. So we're kind of a niche group that does financial services for public educators. And then we also have a line of personal insurance, auto, home, life insurance that we offer to that same group as well. But in terms of the customer experience, we have a lot of, like I said, B2C and B2B. So we work with school districts on the B2B side to get them to understand the importance of offering a retirement savings program for their employees. And we help them administer that part of the program for their benefits, for their employee benefits. And then on the consumer side, we have, basic customer service. We have call centers and so on and so forth. So it's a little mixture of both.
Yeah, so it's interesting. NPS works across those two usually very different markets. So interesting.
Pete, if I could just clarify for a second, because I think you were onto something that was really insightful that I think the listeners will want to hear a little bit more about. And Amy, if you want to expand on it, you go ahead. But you asked, so I don't want the listeners to think that it's just one question, just like you said. It's just, what's the likelihood? It's just one concept, but you're absolutely right. There's a whole lot of other questions that Amy's organization asks. And so they're measuring customer input in so many different areas, including reviewing their products, their services. Customer service is one area, communication is another area. But in the customer service segment of her research, they definitely implement the 0 to 10 scale. So Amy, I don't know if you want to add to that, but so they're measuring a lot of different stuff. It's not just a one thing deal.
Right. I guess that's what I was trying to say. It's usually, I have seen one question surveys that were NPS score. That's it. There's maybe some value in that, but I think a company like yours got to put it in some kind of context. But you specifically mentioned member experience or customer experience. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about that.
So you want to know how it has improved your customer experience with the organization?
I want to know how, what does a customer experience look like, or a customer journey, let's say on the B2C side, and does it follow to the B2B side? Is it, people do their own research now, and then these are customers that are already experiencing a relationship with the firm, and you're asking them, how likely are you to refer us? And so how does it impact customer experience? How does the score,
I think for us, it impacts our customer experience a lot, actually, because our business was basically built on referrals. And that is the primary source of what we see as the source of customers. Referrals are definitely the primary source of how people get to know us. And I think that's because of the relationships that we've formed with the school districts over the years. We've been in business now for 50 years, actually 51. And we've been able to form that relationship on the B2B side quite well over the years. And so the trust is there. Their employer has, hired a vendor to help administer their retirement program. And so they have the opportunity then, as an individual, as a consumer, to perhaps choose from a number of different vendors within their employer set to, open a retirement account with. And a lot of times it is the old veteran teachers in the building who are the ones saying, just start something, start, $5 a month, put away into your retirement account. And those are the types of word of mouth that we often hear helps us, get our name in front of some of the newer folks that need to do that sort of thing. So that's the first part of the journey. And then the second part of the journey is once they decide to open an account with us or, decide to do some sort of service with us, then they typically either come in through a financial presentation that we offer through those school districts. We have people in the field who are experts, if you will, in doing financial education, or it is a consultation. So we also offer some complimentary consultations to help people understand the need for personal savings in their retirement picture. So it's a lot of that. And again, the way people get to that is primarily from referrals, people they trust in their school that are saying something great about whatever organization. So for us, this is a benchmark.
It's another thing that intersects B2C to B2B, where they're both fueled by referrals. You're referring your neighbor, you're referring another school district. What's interesting to me is I run into a lot of potential clients and clients and marketing people that are CEOs, people that make big marketing decisions. In their mind, marketing is for new customers, not for referrals. So we don't need to do marketing. We're all word of mouth based. So if you're referral based, that really elevates the NPS score. And Bill, explain how the scoring works, because you were trying to get that through my 5-year-old brain before the program. So you're really measuring your organization's performance.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something that I hope Amy will talk a little bit about too. But so there's a 0 to 10 scale. So 0 means I'm not gonna recommend you or refer you to anybody. 10 means I'm definitely shouting your name from the rooftops and I'm very likely to recommend you. And anybody can score a 0 to 10 anywhere they want. I mean, so it's anywhere on that scale. And so they give you a number. But the key thing is, like I'd mentioned before, the 9s and 10s are what organizations hope to get, because the 9s and 10s are those high numbers where they're shouting your name, your praise from the rooftops. If you're getting anything from a 0 to a 6, you're considered what's called a detractor, which means most likely you're not saying anything good about the organization. And in fact, you might be saying a lot of things bad about it. And so what you do, and the middle category is called the passives, which we hope we don't have too many of those, but we try to bring the passives up to the promoters. But I don't want to get too detailed, but really
that's really helpful.
Go for it.
Well, I was going to say it almost makes it a little bit scary, I think, to marketers, because it's really, if you've got a majority of low scores, or like in our case, we got a -5, that's where they wait for you in the parking garage.
Yes.
if it gets that bad.
Yeah.
Those are the disgruntled. I don't know.
But even I don't know about. And Amy's group does phenomenal. Every year they, usually exceed their number, and their number. That's the other thing that's really nice about having this, is that there's a national benchmark against other groups in the industry. So you can kind of see how you compare. Like she said, financial services, but they could look at financial services. They could look at it against insurance companies and see how are they comparing, and
a standardization,
not letting any
really.
Secrets out of school. They always blow the roof off.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's a trend. So just to kind of set this part up, it's really not something you do once.
No.
Right. So tell us how you use it.
So
if that's okay, if it's not, unless that's a state secret, I don't know.
No, there's no state secret over here, but we've hired Bill's group to help us with this probably about 5 years ago. So I think this is our 5th survey that we've had Bill and his team help us with. And we do this once a year. Yeah, it typically is at the end of the year, end of the calendar year. And we try to keep it consistent with timing, time of year, and so on and so forth, because I think it's important. It is still kind of a snapshot in time, right? So we're looking at a snapshot in time as to when the person were to take the survey and their feelings at the moment of that particular time in their life.
Right.
But we use ultimately the survey, the NPS score is used as a benchmark, so we know how we compare to other like-minded organizations in our industry and financial services. We do have some competitors, of course, as everybody does. So it's helpful for us to get that benchmark so that we can make informed decisions of where we're at. And
Absolutely.
I think it also for us, if our scores are high or if they went down from year to year, it also lets us know perhaps why. And we get to that point by asking some pretty pointed questions on the survey, so we can kind of understand where the pain points are along that customer journey. And that's important to us because then as a marketer, as an executive on the team over here, we can kind of make adjustments to the way that we are, doing our business. So it's very helpful.
That's the context, right? It's like score by itself, it's going to tell you some things, and then you get the context where it gets more, where the rubber hits the road is what do we change? We're not happy with that, or we want to push that score higher, or but what are the specific on the ground things? And I think that's where that context comes in. But I wonder how many marketers, see it as kind of a threat, because it is an easy thing to implement, and it is a pretty powerful measurement.
Well, and the other thing, I think like any research, two things. One, the other thing that I really like what her organization does is they ask a follow-up question, Pete, that says, why did you give us the score that you did?
Right.
And that really, like Amy said, and she's got some other questions that I won't get into, but those really help her to understand, okay, what's going on? And can she see some trends from that? So I think that that's really good. The other thing is I do think it's intimidating for other marketers to do this, because what happens if it's not so good? Or like you said, you're committing to another year to follow up and see, can we get some improvements? So, I'm sure Amy would say the same thing that I would say is, I would never do this if you're scared of what people are going to say to you,
Maybe that's a reason to do it.
Yeah. That's exactly the reason, but they won't,
Well, I want to point out this. You mentioned trends, and so we talk about this on the program occasionally. We probably should talk about it more. When people are looking at any kind of analytics, the numbers in a lot of cases are somewhat relative. So it's what you're really looking at is a trend, a trend over time, right? And so that's why we don't want to discourage anyone doing research at all makes you in the top 2% of all companies, because they don't do research, but doing it once, it is one of those things. It really should be an ongoing function of the organization, because maybe you've got 20 different metrics, and then what counts is how they trend over time, right? So as long as your metrics from a month to month or quarter to quarter basis are all going in the right direction, you're doing well. And if a few of them are going in the wrong direction, then you can use the contextual information to make operational changes. So that's pretty cool. What kinds of insights? Can you share any specific insights that the score has led you to?
Yeah, I can share a lot. There's lots of insights that we've gleaned.
Well, I thought I was putting you on the spot, so that's good to hear. I didn't want to put you on the spot.
Sometimes it's you do these surveys and you feel like they didn't really tell us anything that we didn't already know, right? But in that regard, it is validating for those of us who sit behind the scenes and have done the work to help put these surveys together that, okay, maybe we're not crazy. We actually do understand that this is potentially an issue, or this is something that is really great that the team is doing. And I think we've uncovered a few of those things over the years, and it's been helpful. It's been really neat to see the trends with the survey results that we've had, I think, over the last 5 years that have helped us make some better decisions, certainly on the customer service and operations side. But then also from a marketing standpoint, we've added in a couple of questions, I think, over the last 2 years that ask things about, how do you prefer to be communicated with? Is it digitally? Is it text? Is it email? Is it phone? And we've seen a change, actually, a recent change in what we always thought was people were not really wanting to hear from us over the phone. But now the switch is they prefer communicating over the phone, which is in a different, it's certainly different for us to be thinking that way. So we know that it's important to continue to have live representatives answering the phone and making some outbound phone calls as well. So those are the types of information that we glean from these reports every year that I think is very important to business.
Well, good marketing should be based on the scientific method. And so what we're talking about is research is a form of testing a hypothesis that the marketing strategist said, I think this is what's going to engage best or produce this result. And then this is testing that. So, a lot of folks, we're always trying to dispel myths. One of them is that marketing is just all creative. It's brainstorming. It's cows with sunglasses. It's.
You mean it's not?
It's parts of it, but no. If you're doing it right, and maybe this is a great way that people can ask themselves, hey, are we using the scientific method in our marketing, or are we just listening to Ron? Because that's two different things. Hey, if you don't mind, let me just real quick want to plug this we do these webinars as part of what we're even doing today on the program, which is helping people understand marketing better. And one way that we do that is with webinars. We've got one coming up. I can say the date, but this video will live forever and no one will know what that means. But you can check out the comments for the next date. We're actually running all these different ones continuously. This one is Getting It Right, How to Develop a Message That Customers Can't Resist. And so it's science, it's art, and it's not just a webinar. We're going to help you work on your message. Okay, so you're going to leave there with a better message. Depending on which ticket you bought, you're also going to get some tools and all that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to that. It's coming up week or so. But back to the NPS score. And also you can catch this program every Thursday at 11 o'clock Central Time on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and coming very soon, a lot more other places. It's going to get kind of weird. We're going to get some of those people sitting on our lawn and,
Oh, that's good.
I'm used to it. So
are you're going to have them sitting on your lawn? You're going to be playing some music for them. Is that what you're going to do?
No. We'll be setting the dogs on them.
Okay.
Because we tested them and they flunked the Net Promoter Score. They get the dogs.
That's beautiful. By the way, talking about the Net Promoter Score, I don't know if anybody's been to a doctor, or a healthcare group, but almost always, I don't know what it is, I am always getting the 0 to 10 scale when I go visit a doctor. And so it's like, I just kind of chuckle at it because they're using it a lot, so.
Well, look how old I am. And then that should answer the first question. But funny, here in Texas, apparently they don't care whatsoever. So we never get that here. So maybe they should. I just had an experience with Cotman Transmissions. Cotman, pretty good sized national company. First of all, Cotman, hey, your website doesn't work on the iPad at all. And the other thing is, at the bottom, there's a whole bunch of code showing. I mean, this is like a big, good sized company. Then they have a phone number. That's their 800 number. You can find a location or you can call, right? So I call because I tried to call the one here. It turns out they're not even in business anymore. It's still listed on the website. Phone numbers don't work. So I call the national number because I just have a question, right? It has a recording that says, find a location to call there. So Cotman, you need some help, give us a call. We fix that stuff. And if you did a Net Promoter Score, you'd probably find out how much business went over to AMCO, who's now working on my transmission.
There you go.
Now, would the NPS score help something like that? Because I'd kind of be like, 2, 1. Ooh, there's a 0 option?
I better
let's tag them. Let's tag them in the comments. We'll find out who the CEO is. We'll tag them in the comments.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll become a sponsor.
Amy, didn't you and I say we're from Minneapolis? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Get ourselves in trouble here, I'll let Amy hit that one if you want.
I have to say though that I was, I do remember using it and using it a lot. And I think there was a period of time it kind of fell out of favor with me. I think that too many people were it's kind of like customer satisfaction surveys where very valuable to do, you should do them, but if you're not going to take action, if you're not going to do the survey properly, then you're going to have things like, well, a satisfied customer will still buy from a competitor. Well, that's true. Someone who says that they'll refer you may not necessarily refer you, but that's actually not what the measurement it's about. It's a lot more meta than that, isn't it? It isn't whether that specific person who's answering the survey is actually going to make a referral. It's what is their propensity, which speaks to like how thrilled are they? I mean, I guess our music shows work the same way. If we have a great night, we get a ton of word of mouth. If we have a night, not so much. People still enjoy it. They clap. They almost act exactly the same. But the difference between a great show and a pretty good show is the word of mouth. With one you get it, with one you don't.
Yeah. Amy, do you want to address that, or did you want me to?
You go ahead, Bill. Why don't you start?
I actually really like that analogy of the performance, Pete, because if they, like you said, if they like you, chances are they're gonna give you a good score. But like you said, sometimes the music is over the top, and they just absolutely are going to just start screaming, "I just went to this great concert," or whatever the case is. So I think you're right. And then the other thing that you said, which I think is very scary, and I would be I'd be interested to see how other people think about this, would be when somebody does really score you low. To me, you got to look at it in the trend category. So like one person giving you a 2 or a 3, maybe it's just a bad experience. But if you've got a lot of people doing that, and that's why I kind of like that net promoter score, because if you subtract that from the promoters, it may not look that pretty if you're getting a lot of people that are giving you bad scores. So it might be that your transmission company needs to start paying attention to that.
Well, it's especially important, I think, in the insurance industry, which we actually have a ton of experience in, because it's all about their experience. Because a lot of times, a broker or somebody is in that role, the news, they're delivering a lot of bad news all the time.
Right.
And it's kind of out of their control sometimes. It depends on how they do it. Some places have their own actuaries, and they split apart all the policies, and they change things around and put it back together, and they're able to save some money. But most of the time, I'd hate to be, an agent coming with another rate hike. So somehow I think you have to transcend that and provide such a phenomenal experience that not only do they stay, but they tell somebody, which is the next step, right? In the band, I'm a band leader, so I'll just tell the folks, if you're in Austin, Texas, I'm an artist in residence at the famous Saxon Pub, which is a old roadhouse down here, and so. But, our perception of our own performance, on nights that we feel like we're not quite connecting, the people are still doing exactly what they do. They're tipping, they're applauding, they're almost acting exactly the same way. But on those really special nights that we try to do every time, but we don't always get there, where everything is just clicking and it's one of those magical nights, you can feel it in the air. And it's the word of mouth. And because the next show, you actually, we talk to people, how'd you find out about us? And it's a ton of word of mouth, really. And we do a lot of promotion, but we don't ever hear somebody say, well, I saw that in social media, thought I'd come scope it out. No, it's always like, hey, my friend Jeff, right? And so, that informs us on, we should probably play better.
Yeah. Yeah.
We should put a rehearsal in once in a while.
Not into that. A couple of my clients that use the NPS score, they kind of tie it to either bonuses or some kind of leadership compensation. So, so there are ways to deal with that if, depending on how things go. So that might be something. But one of the other things that I was hoping that maybe we could talk to is if somebody is skeptical, Amy, is there anything that we should, is there anything that's a question that somebody, anything, I don't say wrong with the NPS score, or anything that might raise a question for somebody thinking about doing this that you'd give them the other side?
I think that's a great question. I think we touched a little bit on this earlier, but if you're not going to do anything with the score, then what's the point of measuring something? If you're not going to try to get better with with whatever results you get from this, what's the point of doing it? So you have to be committed, I think, for the long term. In order for this to be successful, and in order for you to be able to, as an organization, make some changes, and you have to be willing to do that as well, and listen to the feedback that you get. And I think that's important. And it's just, and that, we're a relatively small organization, so getting our executive team and our management team to actually listen and understand some of the comments and the feedback that may not be as great as we anticipated. Getting them to understand and listen to those comments is really important, and they do. And I think that's where this becomes really helpful from an organization standpoint. And you can start to make some small changes that hopefully will end up doing better things for the organization as a whole.
Well, and we're talking about research in the context of doing it with customers that you've already won, right? So many companies are in a position where they're trying to make big marketing decisions, but they're either working on company lore or just their own sort of inside their head perception, and they go into it without any sort of plan, without any sort of validation. This is one way that you can kind of abuse these things. Throw it in there at the beginning, and then, or put the plan in place and then start afterwards. The idea should be is research should be reducing your risk on your marketing spend and then enabling you to focus on different areas. And I think the example of, hey, somebody has an anomaly. Maybe your phone system flips out. Maybe it's not so stupid as Cotman. It just flips out for one call, right? Well, you might get a bad score. Well, we need, and an executive might see that one bad score and get pretty excited. But that's where I think we as marketing professionals, it's really our job to make sure that they understand the context. I love the question, by the way, why'd you score us that way? But understand the context, and also that it's an aggregate view is what counts. Any one answer doesn't really mean a lot in the bigger context. And especially if you start getting into big sample sizes, right? What kind of sample sizes are you guys seeing?
We had, let's see, Bill, we might want to help me out with the math and the metrics on this one, but on our
I can, but I didn't want to tell anything proprietary.
Oh, well, if that could be competitive information, that's really up to the guest.
It's
like marketing folks sitting around talking. I forget we're on the old LinkedIn.
It depends on if Amy wants to make you cry or not, Pete. Pete and I did a study, Amy, for another company a little while ago, and I'm telling you, we were calling and sending stuff and email. I mean, we did everything to try to get, and it was like, no one was responding. And we were like, please, like, what's going on here? So.
Well, because we never see it. We never see that. So we're kind of like, what, it's very seldom that we get confused over our work, right? We're like, what's up with this? And we'll tell you why here at the end of this. But
and I don't know if, Amy, if you want to share anything, otherwise, if you want me to, you let me know. Otherwise, I'll respect but all I can tell the audience is they blow the lid off of everything. I mean, their response rate is phenomenal, and they're kind of scary. They get, which I think is why they get such high scores too. People love them,
Well, any type of customer research, we've talked about this before, your customers want to help you.
Yeah.
Do they not? And I guess this is a way to measure it.
That's absolutely true. And we do see phenomenal open rates on emails, just from a marketing perspective. Sometimes it's like, wow, we didn't think that was going to resonate with people, but it did. And they open their emails and they pick up the phone and they tell us when they're not happy or when they are happy. There's a lot of feedback that we get from our customers, which is really insightful, and it's very helpful for us too. So we, for our surveys, we consistently get a statistically significant sample size there. Every time we've done these NPS surveys, the perception surveys that we do every year. So that's a true testament to how much our customers are engaging with our organization. So.
Yeah, well, and so the question today, vanity metric or powerful tool, I guess we're leaning on the side of powerful tool. And the viewers will see that that title just popped up because I had it turned off accidentally. But now it's on, and it says, you know, we like to put the title at the top of the podcast through the whole thing because, you know, people will, if they're interested in that topic, they'll see that and they'll watch it. And if they're not, they can skip it. And so we like to put that up. But, you know, it's, I don't know how sad. We should survey our own. Actually, here's what we're going to do. We do our next podcast next week, and I don't know the topic yet because we haven't talked about it yet. But we're gonna go ahead and post a survey to see if people would recommend this podcast.
There you go.
Should we do that?
Yeah. Well, they're definitely going to do it now after Amy's been our guest, so for sure we'll do that.
Oh, we'll have you back on to cry.
If I could make a comment though to the listeners, and Amy and Pete, you guys jump in after I say this. I think two things. One, I think any kind of customer research that you want to do is going to be healthy, with the exception of what Amy said. If you're not willing to do something about it, or if you're not really going to pay attention to it, then don't do it. The second thing that I want to say is I think each organization goes through its own level of what I would call life cycle or sophistication. So some people might start off, maybe they're just making a few calls and finding out what customers want. Maybe somebody is doing a survey. Maybe somebody to the point of where WA member benefits. I mean, they're very sophisticated. They're doing the best, you know, possible. So I think, you know, again, I think it depends on where people are, and you don't have to jump into it. Maybe start off with something, a smaller survey if that's what you want to do, and see where people are.
Well,
so
and this is a thing that, you know, maybe is blowing our own horn a little bit here, but an experienced researcher is going to be able to work with a smaller sample size. So it isn't just about, you know, there's a lot you could do with small samples. I think that, you know, as we always tell people, if you're doing research, it needs to be structured right. You know, it's not something that you should have your assistant do if they don't have a research background. Because you can skew data and make really expensive mistakes. And so you want to make sure that it's done according to the standards in the industry, and that they're not leading questions. And then you have somebody who's a third party to help you interpret it, because all of us are full of bias of our own business. I mean, I'll just tell you, I brought in marketing consultants to help me. Actually, Bill is a marketing consultant that helped me. And because sometimes I think we're so close to it, and this is one way to take what is sometimes kind of subjective, right, experience, and create a tangible measurement. I guess I'm a convert.
I would say that's an important point, Pete, because the bias is real, right? We have, many of us have been working in organizations for a long time, and we're not the customers. We have to remember we're not the customers. And that is a really important piece to get out there in front of those folks, because we need to understand what it is that is great for them or upsetting to them, so that we can make changes that are beneficial to our customer and gain more customers in the future. So
I find that I say that a lot. The customer isn't you. Like, however way that you buy isn't necessarily the way that they buy. The things that matter to you aren't necessarily the things that matter to them. And all of us are not immune from this. We sometimes can't see it. Is that the forest for the trees thing? Is that something like that?
I would also say, too, that if you're going to do this yourself, which I don't recommend, this is why we had Bill and his team come in and help us, is that your questions can sometimes be biased and written in a biased way that you don't really realize at the time until you have somebody who's outside looking in and saying, yeah, well, this is actually a two-part question, or this doesn't really, like, what is it you're trying to get at? What is the answer that you're trying to get at? And that's where Bill was really helpful for us. So he taught me a few things about surveying folks and over the years. And I think I've learned a few things from him as well. But the bias is real, and I think that's something that's really important. You probably shouldn't do this yourself.
Well, yes. I mean, that leads to questions like, when did you stop clubbing baby seals?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I've seen almost, you know, obviously I'm being flippant, but I swear I've seen things that are very, very close to that companies were going to do research. They had the right idea, but then they were asking questions that were just clearly like trying to establish their reality, and that's just garbage data, right? And so, if you're spending a few $1,000 on marketing, hey, who cares, right? If you're spending $1 million on marketing, now this starts to matter a lot. And so you want to make the best hypothesis that you can to reduce your risk. And that's what I think marketing is really all about, is reducing risk. It's not really about websites and brochures and copy and creative and all this. It's about reducing operational risk. And that risk is you're going to blow all your money on a whole bunch of activity and stuff that doesn't deliver the results that you're looking for. In this case, more referrals. And I hear the music creeping up in my ear. That means it's 1 minute. But thank you for being with us. Is there any last thoughts? I think it's been a great topic. I mean, I hope people have gotten something from it. And would you be on again sometime? We can sit around and talk marketing stuff.
Sure, absolutely.
Boy. I'm fired up about that.
She would be great. She's very knowledgeable, and it's always exciting to sit and talk with her. When we set this up, she said, "Well, what are we going to talk about? There's so many different things to talk about." So
it's kind of endless, and believe it or not, we don't always agree on everything.
You've been listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. Add to the conversation by commenting, sharing, and liking. And don't forget to subscribe and check out the links in the comments. Learn more at b2bmarketingmindset.com.